Alabama's biggest non-conference game ever is headed to Tuscaloosa this Thursday as number two Purdue heads to Coleman Coliseum to take on an Alabama team that's flying high after getting a huge win in New York City against the previously ranked number five St. John's Red Storm. I'm Charles Branch. This is Crimson Crossover Cross Court, and I'm pleased to be joined by Brian Tonsoni, who looks to be our newest Alabama fan as well tonight. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk college basketball and especially Alabama basketball in the direction that they're headed so far this season.
Well, I joke about you being a huge Alabama fan, but you are based out of Indiana. I know you've got some Indiana paraphernalia behind you as well, but you also, with your experience doing bracketology, you know a lot about college basketball. And so I do want to start with the bracketology side. I was doing a little bit of research, but nobody can tell the history of Delphi bracketology better than you can. So I want to give you the floor. Tell us a little bit about Delphi. Tell us about how it came together and what you guys do with the students over at the high school.
I love this question. Thanks for asking me about it. It started in 2015 with the question from some students in econ as we had a little downtime, and they asked, where does Indiana and Purdue likely fall on the seed line in the NCAA tournament? And this was like in February, and I said to the guys, "You think we can, research this and try to figure it out ourselves?" And that just put into play a lot of Googling, a lot of contacting people in the business, and they were very helpful in getting us started. And we met, and we would meet for before school and have breakfast and put together a bracket and kind of check to see where we were. And then the next year, a gentleman by the name of Shelby Mast, a USA writer from Houston, Texas, encouraged us to enter the contest, the bracketmatrix.com that collects all the ESPN, all the professionals, and the rookies or volunteers who create a bracket with the scoring system of correct seeds and so forth. And that was our first year entering the bracket, and we won. We won the whole thing over like 180 some brackets entered. And I was part of a post game show, Indiana post game show, and so they tweeted out congratulations and all of that. Little did I know that there was an executive producer of NFL Today in New York City who follows our podcast Twitter page, and so I get a phone call Monday, an email, and then a phone call from New York City wanting to come in and do a clip for the NCAA tournament show on Friday night as the tournament was going to start. And so Wednesday we had people in from New York and all over with lighting, and that's how we got started. That's how we got known. It was six young men and myself that started in 2015. This year we're up to 24 members and three teachers. And we have, some of those 24 are diehards and working every day. Others, show up once a month for a meeting. We probably end up with around 10 active members and three faculty members. And what we do is we try to predict the bracket. We're not very good once the bracket's selected on Selection Sunday and trying to pick the winner of the bracket, but we try to pick who the one seeds are, who the two seeds are, what matchups. And we try to, with our podcast and with our website, inform fans like yourself and like your Alabama fans on where Alabama likely will be come Selection Sunday. We think that's just very, very important part of college basketball. So we meet every Friday. We have a special class that we meet, and we're starting to meet now. And we'll have some meetings in our homeroom. We'll meet at B-Dubs and watch games together. And we have a spreadsheet, and we just talk. We act like the NCAA committee as a group of old teachers and young students. We try to replicate what goes on in that committee room come March. And then we've branched out. We've had some podcasts, and we had an internet TV studio show for a while. We do have a website, and right now we have some people who really love to create graphics, freshmen and sophomore kids who create graphics, and so I'm spitting those out left and right as I can to get them experience. We have some kids who are writing. We do short capsules. We don't do ESPN full paragraphs. We just, bullet point, post-game capsules and preview capsules for those fans who want a quick 30-second hit of college basketball. Go to Delphi Bracketology, you click on our webpage, and you'll see today, what were some big wins and good wins of the last week, little things like that. And so that's what we do. We talk basketball in school, and it's been this is our 11th year of doing it, and it's really motivated me to keep going.
When you've got that many people working on it as far as staff and students, is it broken down like the NCAA does, where a particular student is watching specific teams and then having to make their case based off of the metrics that you're looking for? Do you have it broken down that specifically, or is it more, hey, we're all college basketball fans, we're all kind of doing our research, and we're all in the know of what's going on that we can make a case and start putting the bracket together?
Yeah, we have a spreadsheet. We use warrennolan.com for our data collection, and then I put it into a spreadsheet, color code it, and then I put it up on the screen. And every time I update that, which is at the height of the season, it's every day, I update that. And then when we meet, I ask him, where is it wrong? Where's the ranking wrong? So I set it 1 through 68, and then I challenge them, find the mistakes or find where we need to improve this. And so it's we don't do what the committee does and say you're in charge of the Mountain West, you're in charge of the Big Ten. But at times I'll have someone say, "Hey, look at these schools here. You know what's going on with that, or you keep track of that." But we don't do it to the extent that the committee does. It is when we meet, we are looking at 1 through 68, and should teams move up, should teams move down, based on the NCAA criteria that is stated by the committee.
Based on how you and your team go through the bad bracket and are trying to seed teams, we have the net now. Obviously, strength of schedule and getting wins, of course, is very important. Is there a metric that you don't feel like is talked about enough when it comes to figuring out which teams should be in the tournament and which teams shouldn't, and where they should fall on the seed line, that just doesn't really get enough play in the media as far as what is this hidden metric, I guess? Or is it pretty standard these days that it's all out there and these are the numbers you got to hit?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because each committee is different. You have 12 members. I think they might even gone up to 14 members, and what they feel is important. Seven of them might feel that quad one wins are important. Others might think Ken Palm is important. And then, like you said, they argue their case. So we try to find trends. What has happened in the past? What have they published new that they might be using more of this year because it's a new metric or a new statistic? But generally, it is who do you beat and where do you beat them? That's going to be a consistent. Now, we might be a seed line or two off if they look at Ken Palm a little heavier than what we're looking at. We try to identify that when they have the reveal 6 weeks before the tournament. That gives us a little bit of insight about what each committee emphasizes. But in the past, we've liked quad one wins, quad two losses, or quad two wins, and non-conference strength of schedule. We have found have been somewhat consistent over the years. And yes, we try to replicate the committee, even though we may disagree with some of the criteria that they use. The metrics have made it, I don't want to say simpler, but boy, when you have Bart Torvik and Ken Palm and the net, and you can see, the averages of where those are at, that generally helps you a little bit more than when we first started. It was just quad one, quad two wins and a strength of schedule number. So they've added metrics, which I think if I were a basketball program, I'd hire someone solely to do metrics for scheduling, to make sure you're scheduling strong enough in the non-conference, to make sure that you're scoring enough. And I'm not a big fan of scoring margin, but your offense and defensive efficiency matters. So when you win big, you have a better offensive, but help the coaches understand those metrics because that'll help you in seeding and that'll help you in selection down the line. But that's what we do. We generally talk, and each year we'll put about a 5 or 6 step criteria for us, what we think the committee will do. And then we constantly evaluate those bottom 2 pieces of criteria to see if we're right or wrong. And then I think the last 4 in have different views. When they get there, it's really tough for those last 4 teams in. I think the top is easy to seed 1 through 7. You get 8 through 10, and then you get your individual people arguing and wanting North Carolina in last year when Bubba Cunningham was on, the committee. So you get things like that don't fit the criteria.
Right. You said you've been doing this for 11 years, started with a handful of students, and I have to imagine, just the fun around March Madness and getting together and talking basketball, that this has been being a part of this can be a springboard for a lot of your students into whether it's the basketball field or other fields that are data and analytics driven. How have your students been able to use that as they go on to college and outside of college? And, how rewarding is that for you that has helped bring this together, that you're 11 years into it, you're still having a lot of success, and you don't have just success stories from successful brackets. I'm sure you got success stories from successful kids that are being able to use the knowledge, their minds to go and do great things in the world.
Yeah, Charles, I think it's very important to think in education and critically think. And there are no concrete answers in the data for bracketology. We can argue that this team's the last one seed and someone has to be the top two seed, and then we're proven wrong on selection Sunday. But it's the process of analyzing that, being able to communicate, and being able to agree to disagree and all of those things. And then we do media with students too. I'll bring them to Purdue games because we're 20 minutes away from Purdue. We've taken students to Ohio State for football because that was their favorite team. We got media for that. We have 5 or 6 people who went in the media field since we've been doing podcasts and things of that nature. So we have an eye doctor who's the one of the initial guys on that CBS thing is now an eye doctor here in town. So some of it directly correlates to what they go and do. We have a couple financial analysts who are personal financial analysts for people. Some numbers there had to help out too, but overall, it is one of the best things. There's I call it hidden curriculum we won't talk education a whole lot, but you have your standards that every state tells you to do, and then you have a thing like bracketology where you cover all of it, but kids don't know it and teachers don't know it, but we're speaking, we're thinking, we're writing, we're creating, and yes, it means a lot to me to see a lot of those young men and women in our group move on to be successful at the collegiate level and then go get careers either in sports or in data or using those skills in their chosen careers.
There's been a lot of talk in the offseason about the field shifting from 68 to potentially 76 teams. So you as a bracketologist, as you just talked about, it's really hard to see those teams 8 to 10, 8 to 11. In your opinions, or in your opinion, what do you feel like the NCAA should do as it relates to the size of the field for NCAA basketball?
I have to give you 2 answers, one as a college basketball fan and then one as a bracketologist. I think as a college basketball fan, I don't want it to expand. I think 68 is awesome. And then the field of 68 has a name issue then, right? If it goes to 76. So I really enjoy that show. But I think it expands. Then you combine the bracketology and the sports fan, and if they expand, give me some mid majors in there. Give me 2 or 3 out of the A10. Give me 2 or 3 out of the Mountain West, which has happened here recently. But there's some other, the Missouri Valley has some really good basketball, and you have a Drake. If they get beat in the championship game, they deserve a spot. Indiana State a couple years ago deserved a spot in the tournament. So from that aspect, I would like to see it expand as a bracketologist and a college basketball fan to give some of these other teams a shot. Last year, deservingly, SEC gets 14 teams in. But even in my conference, the Big Ten, do you really want to see the 10th or 11th team in when you can see an upstart Indiana State for at least a round or two? It's personal preference. I love tradition, but it used to be 32 teams, and then it moved to 40, and then it moved to 48, and then to 64 and 68. And the bottom line is I'm going to tune in, right? And I think bracketology, as far as selecting teams, gets a little bit easier because it's always those last 2 teams that give you problems. Well, those teams are obviously going to be in that you miss on probably, but again, it just brings more teams into the picture too. So you have to be precise in the bracketology piece. I think it's going to go to at least 72 or 76. I think that is a almost a done deal. The traditionalists, I like old gymnasiums. I like old baseball parks. I'm an old man, so I've been to a lot of those. I like tradition, and I don't want it to expand. But when we put together a 76 team bracket on our bracketology page, there are some interesting matchups. And if you condense a couple things, when you condense the 14, 15, and 16 seeds into play-in games, and I would not call it play-in games, but now those teams have a better chance of winning. And this is the aspect that I discovered. if you have games at the Palestra and at Dayton and at Hinkle and someplace out west, and you have all of your 16 seeds and 15 seeds playing against other, those teams are going to experience winning in the NCAA tournament, where right now it's only two. It's the two 16 seed games that have a chance. That your 15s and 14s, unless that one miracle win, which happens. Oakland beating Kentucky a couple years ago, but you get more chance for them to win and advance. And I think that's a benefit that I never had thought about either. So I know that's not a specific answer. Traditional, let's keep it the same. If we're going to move, let's add some mid majors and get some teams some chance to win. I could buy into that, and I'll be okay with it.
Indiana, so doing bracketology, but you're also at the high school like we talked about. And so that means you're really close to Indiana high school basketball, which was glamorized, of course, from the movie Hoosiers. And, down here in Alabama, we talk about our high school football. Texas and Florida, they talk about their high school football. Indiana is one of those states. It's high school basketball, and I have to imagine it's passionate and intense and really helps the community rally around each other. Tell us a little bit about just Indiana high school basketball for fans here in Alabama that don't really get to experience that.
Yeah, it's for a long time has been a source of community activity. That's fallen a little bit with the modern technology and everything, but Indiana basketball is just very, very popular. I was a head coach for a high school for 10 years, an assistant for another 12 years. I've coached in some fantastic gymnasiums. We have gymnasiums that'll seat 5,000, 7,000. I played in high school in front of 7,200 people in Michigan City, Indiana. Some great gyms. Newcastle seats 9,000, and they have a holiday tournament, and people just tune in and come to those games. And Damon Bailey, an Indiana basketball legend, in 1990, played in front of the state championship, 40,000 people in the RCA Dome. It is a way of life here in Indiana, and it is, the tournament has been special. We used to have single class, and then we've gone to class basketball. That's diluted it a little bit, but yeah. Friday nights and Saturdays are basketball nights. You walk in, smell of popcorn, and gyms are crazy. Cheer blocks are crazy. The town, when you have a community, my son now coaches at a very small school called Rossville, and they have one of their better teams in years, and they have a chance to win the first round of the tournament, second round of the tournament. They're that good, and a town will just absolutely go crazy and carpool all the way down and caravan and T-shirts. It is, I would imagine, very similar to your football in Alabama here in Indiana. But man, we have seven of the top gymnasiums is capacity wise in the state of Indiana, and I've been to almost every one of them, and they're just remarkable when they're full.
So when you have brands like Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame, you can recruit on a national landscape because basketball fans, basketball players know about those schools. Yet when I look at Purdue's roster, four of their top players are from the state of Indiana. How important is it for programs in Indiana to keep that talent local, and just that it is that you're getting to watch guys in your backyard lead your programs to the highest heights and be successful?
I think it's extremely important. I think Coach Painter has done a good job winning that battle in the state of Indiana here recently in the last, 5 to 10 years over Indiana. Notre Dame's basketball, they're a football school, and their basketball's up and coming under a coach Shrewsbury up there. But I think recruiting the best in Indiana is important. There are years where you need to branch out because the talent is better in other places around the country. And with AAU and the technology now, you get to know players a lot more. Back in the 70s and 80s, you recruited locally because that was your recruiting budget, is get in a car and go to a high school gym. But things have exploded with the availability of kids to play the game nowadays. So about a kid in California if you're in Indiana or Purdue. But what Matt Painter has done is he's taken the old Bob Knight way of doing things, is getting players that might not be at the top echelon of talent or the analytics or the jumping ability, but love basketball coming from that Indiana high school environment and then want to compete at the next level. Braden Smith is an example of that. Very few people wanted him. He was 6 foot and he's probably really 5'9", 5'10", but he's the best point guard in college basketball, in my opinion. And he's really the best point guard in college basketball because of his size and his ability, that he just finds ways to lead the team, whether it's scoring, assist, rebounding, whatever. He's just a winner. Fletcher Lawyer, a winner coming from the Fort Wayne area. Trey Kaufman Wren, I've been fortunate enough. My son at Rossville works with the trainer and helps a trainer of these college athletes, and they train Kaufman Wren. So I had ability to sit in a couple workouts. One, there's no better gentleman than Trey Kaufman Wren. And two, he works so hard. All college athletes do, though. That I'm not trying to set him aside, but what you do is you get Indiana guys who love Indiana basketball, who love the tradition of Indiana and Purdue, want to come there and keep that tradition going, and then just eat, sleep, and drink basketball, and then maximize their abilities. And the way, if you're an Alabama fan, you're concerned about Thursday night is then they play together, right? And they play together, and the sum of their parts together can beat more talented teams on a regular basis, and that's Purdue basketball. And that does come from getting, I think, guys from Indiana, just like it would be football. You get guys from Texas, Alabama, the South, where you play good high school football. They're going to have a desire to win and go on and achieve at the college level more than states that don't have that football. It's just the reverse up here in Indiana. We have that debate all the time in our podcast, our Indiana basketball podcast that I do is it necessary to get a large number of Indiana guys? I think you got to get the best Indiana guys. The Mullins kid that's at Connecticut right now was a big miss for Indiana, and part of the reason why there was a change at the coaching helm, that when a kid who can just flat out shoot, which Indiana basketball is known about, coming off the picket fence in Hoosiers and hitting that shot, and you let him get to UConn when the family and the kid wanted to come to an in-state school. Those are the kind of recruiting battles that cost people jobs. But yeah, I think there is a pipeline from high school to the local colleges.
Well, another pipeline that Matt Painter has, whether it's Indiana or somewhere else throughout this country or throughout the world, is he seems to always find some 7'2", 7'3" big man that anchors the Purdue team and helps lead the team. And of course, you said with the other guards, which we'll get into a little bit later, but of course, Zach Edey's the name that comes to mind because of his recent success. But there's even a guy from Alabama, from Hoax Bluff, Isaac Haas, who played up at Purdue. You just mentioned Trey Kaufman Wren, and he's kind of like a smaller guy relative to those other guys being 6'9", but I know he's got Jacobson as well. That's like a 7'4" guy. He got hurt right before playing Alabama last year, so we didn't get to see him. How has Matt Painter been able to find these guys? And not all these big guys always pan out. So find them and then develop them that they can be a major asset for this Purdue team year in and year out.
Boy, that's his niche, isn't it? Get a big guy, and when he's a freshman and sophomore, maybe play him, maybe not play him, and then next thing you know, they pop as juniors and seniors as being very efficient, if not national type of players. I did not think that Zach Edey would make it in the NBA, and the development and the change in his body. We get to see him a lot here. Purdue's been really good to us at giving us media access for our students and our faculty members in bracketology. You're on the court watching him. His body changed so much from the freshman year to the senior year, so you got to give credit to that strength and conditioning staff. But Matt Painter really believes in having that size, that rim protection, that lob, screen and roll lob game, that low post game. The thing that Matt Painter does well off of that is he has shooters and runs good action for shooters and really messes with your defensive game plan. Like who do you take away, right? And we'll talk about that when we talk about the game coming up on Thursday. But yes, he's got bigs left and right coming in, and like you said, some have transferred out, some haven't. But he will he'll find someone that's 7'4" and underrated, come to our program and get a shot. And more times than not, that big fella can really pose some problems on the basketball floor.
Talk about the guards a little bit because that's a lot of what is talked about at Purdue this year. And it's talked a lot about Alabama as well, and even more so at Alabama with the performance that LeBaron Bailon and Aiden Holloway and Latrell Wrightsell had on Saturday at St. John's. But two guys that have been names in college basketball for a while have been Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer at Purdue. Talk a little bit about those guys and what they do for Purdue. And I know you mentioned you feel like they're the best, backcourt in the country. How do you see the matchup between Purdue's backcourt versus Alabama's backcourt going into Thursday?
So, I just have a lot of respect for Braden Smith. That as a high school coach, if you could coach a kid like that, it would just be the time of a lifetime to coach a kid like that because he just competes. Like he will compete out there. He'll find a way. He makes shots. He makes plays. He is very good at all facets of the game, and has to be number one on the scouting report for Alabama. How are you going to contain him? When he beats you off the dribble, he can score at the rim. He took a couple hits in the Oakland game, falling away, shoulder into the body, scoring and ones. He finds open guys. So, if you double a ball screen, I don't know your Alabama, ball screen defense. I've just watched a little bit of the St. John's game, but if you double him, he's going to find an open man. If you help in the lane and you tag on any kind of action where he gets in the lane, now the guys are open on the perimeter. And that's when he gets, he averaged 8.7 assists last year, and he's like 310 away from setting all-time record. And if they go deep in the tournament, he has a chance to do that. So he's a scoring guard. He can hit from three. He can pull up from three. Like you have to stop him. Now, I think you can stop him with speed and athleticism, and I think you can stop him with size. Like just wall up when he drives in the lane and take your shots. But containing him, I think, is number one on Alabama scouting report because if you can contain him, you have a shot. If you don't contain Braden Smith, then the other players become really good, right? And you got to be careful containing him too because that could also make the other players pretty good. That's how maybe a little less athleticism beats talent when the scheme really works and that the head of that snake can just go where he wants and does what he wants to do. Then the other players just really elevate. Fletcher Loyer's a dead three. I mean, he'll shoot 45% from three. If he's open, the ball's going to go in. You can just put it on the board. He has some pull-up game, and he has a little bit of a drive game. The Purdue fans sometimes lose patience with him because if he is heavily guarded, then he doesn't score a whole lot of points. But if he's open and Purdue runs a lot of handoffs, a lot of ball screens, they'll screen a big to like a pin screen to the corner and run two or three guys off handoffs, and it's really they are one of the best cutting teams at the guards that you'll see. Speed, angles that really can mess up a defense. So watch for that too. If they're moving on that perimeter and creating open shots, they're really tough to handle. And then they got a couple guys off the bench that need to develop. C.J. Cox actually starts. Jack Benner has started, listed as a guard. All can shoot. Benter, I think, hit 3 of 6 against Oakland as a freshman coming in. So if they're open and the passes come inside out, whether you're double teaming a post or whether you're double teaming Braden Smith or stopping him, if you leave the perimeter open, the ball's going to go in, quite a bit. They were 13 to 29 against Evansville from three. They hit a little more threes against Oakland, but their depth is a little bit in development stage behind Loyer and Braden Smith, but they can fill it in. The guy to watch who hasn't really is the Israeli guard, Omer Meyer, come in. He has not found his niche yet with this team, but he has a skill set that is really outstanding. And when he gets playing, that'll be a really good addition either to the starting lineup or to the bench. But those are the guards. The guards, Charles, are the key. You'll have, if TKR's back, he didn't play the first 2 games. He has a hip injury. We'll talk about that. But I really believe that if you let Purdue's perimeter score and shoot the three, you can be in trouble no matter how good you are. And I think Alabama's a top 5 team, top 10 team. When you beat St. John's and what I saw and what I read about, this should be a Alabama game to win and to be favored. But if you allow and lose containment and don't contain or don't listen to the scouting report from coach, and these guys can get open, they will knock down threes like crazy. And I've always thought, back when Edey was here, let Edey get 50, take away the 3 ball. That, again, I'm not a college coach, but I would put a heavy pressure and try to push Purdue back 5 or 10 feet from running their actions. Try to disrupt the guards from penetrating, and then lock in on shooters and don't overhelp, and really let Oscar Clough and Trace Kaufman-Renn beat you and go one-on-one with your post defense.
And so that's what changed the game last year, in my opinion. Alabama fought their way to have a 7-point lead midway through the second half. And then CJ Cox, who wasn't getting the publicity because, as you mentioned, it's Fletcher Lawyer, it's Braden Smith. He comes in and hits back to back to back threes and completely flips that game to where Purdue ends up cruising and getting a huge early win on their resume. Talked about Oscar Clough. Alabama saw Oscar Clough last year when he was at South Dakota State. Um, he and Kaufman Wren are going to be a challenge for any team if they were just on the team by themselves. And then, as you mentioned, pairing them with all these guards. It's a small sample size, but how does Oscar Clough fit in to the Purdue scheme on the offense and defensive side? Or is that kind of incomplete until you get Trey Kaufman Wren out there to see how they both play with each other?
Charles, I think that's the answer. Incomplete. You had some scrimmage games where they played together, and you don't know what the other team was doing or what the strategy was. No scouting report and all of that. Those games are important, but I don't know if you can really get a definitive answer. Oscar has seemed to struggle a little bit offensively, rebounding wise. Although his numbers aren't bad in the first two games, but they played Evansville and Oakland. No disrespect to those schools. It looks like he's trying to find his way in this Purdue scheme, Purdue system. And the first two games that I was at, he looked, a little slow, a little bit maybe thinking more than playing. And so I think that's a development that Matt Painter really wants to kind of goose up a little bit, especially if Trey Kaufman-Renn is hurt. He had a hip issue. I don't know, a little hip pointer is what Coach Painter said after the first game. And so they're still doing tests and everything. So I don't know about his availability. I think it's a huge detriment to Purdue if they don't have him, because he is someone who can score in the paint. As much as I said, let him score in the paint, you don't let him score in the paint, but he is a guy who can go get you points. And then, if you adjust your defense, and again, the guards. I was at the Alabama game last year when you're in Mackey and a kid hits 3 threes in a row and it's a 9-0 run like that, and then that crowd gets going, it is just a brutal place for the visiting teams to play. But that's the kind of guys that Purdue has. When you see them warm up, if you're in the arena, and then you look down at your Alabama size, like, how's this going to play out? We look so much, taller, more athletic, but these guys, scheme-wise and ability-wise, have the ability to hit you in spurts to defeat, I think, more talented teams.
Basketball pundits like to talk about how Alabama lives by the three, dies by the three. And we know as Alabama fans, it's much more than the 3-point shot. It's 3-point layup and free throws. Again, it's a small sample size, but through 2 games for both of these teams, Alabama shot a total of 62 3-pointers at around 30%. Purdue has shot 64 at 40%. And I feel like that sometimes gets forgotten because we talk about the big guys at Purdue, but this is a team that also likes to get the 3-point shots up at a pretty strong clip, and not only a strong clip getting them up, but making a lot of them.
They can shoot. Indiana basketball, high school, college, you'll find shooters. You go to D2, D3 schools here in Indiana, it's a shooting fest. So shooting is Indiana basketball, and Purdue has great shooters, and that's why I say take that away. And anytime you set a defense, you have to give up something, right? You don't plan on it, but here's priority 1, here's priority 2. If priority 3 beats us, we tip our hat and move on to the next game. Any success that my school, Indiana's had against Purdue lately, they have really pressured the guards, and which I think Alabama can do, and they've really limited the open looks, because if you give them open looks, 42% is going to go in. Yeah, and it's interesting because if you have that big dominant guy like Edey, then you're not thought of taking too many threes. But the game of basketball, according to me, is rim, three, and free throws. We finally have it a little bit at our school, Indiana, in the first 2 games, and everyone's going crazy because it's modern basketball. I think from what I know about Alabama and what you did to St. John's off the bounce, that's the offensive strategy that I think this team and Matt Painter will have a great scheme. Um, but they've struggled on the off the bounce against Evansville and Oakland, and then you ratchet it up quite a bit when you get to your Alabama guards. And if you gave St. John's, one of the better defensive teams in the country, a lot of difficulty off the bounce, which creates threes, which creates layups at the rim. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Coach Painter tries to scheme that up. But I think that's an advantage, Charles, for you guys going in, at least early in the season, that it's going to be difficult for Purdue to handle your guards. Here's where Purdue will try to do it. They like to load heavy on the help. You'll see Matt Painter, doing this, telling his weak side to load. So they're really heavy on the help. They don't stick. So maybe, and again, I don't know the playbook very well, but as you drive that skip pass or that toss back against the wave type of action for your 3-point shots is could be a key because they'll try to load up and help prevent some of that driving ability. I think Painter's one of the best schematic coaches that he'll have, and he can set a scheme to help those players who struggle with that ability to stop the bounce to help them win. Then that's where you guys got to counter that. But I think your guards' ability to beat people off the dribble will be one of the key factors in the game Thursday night.
So talked about a little bit about that with some St. John's guys after our game, where they St. John's has really good guards, but they're all brand new to the system. That's not the case at Purdue. So you get out of the St. John's game with only 7 turnovers, which Alabama was averaging 15 per game through the exhibition and the game against North Dakota. How so hitting on, a couple keys that you already mentioned, what other keys do you see to this game and how do you think it actually plays out when they finally throw the ball up Thursday night in Coleman Coliseum?
I think the two keys, everyone has Purdue ranked high, number one, number two, one seed, and all of that based on returning players. We've talked about the 3-point shooting, obviously being a key. I think Purdue's on-ball defense is the second key, and then the third key is rebounding. Purdue has struggled on the glass, protecting the glass on the defensive end, and so when Alabama misses shots, can Purdue keep Alabama off the glass? If Alabama hits the glass and can, use the bounce, I think that's going to favor Alabama. And the only thing that I'm unsure of is, Matt Painter's got 4 or 5 days. You give Matt Painter 4 or 5 days. He knows that. He said it in the press conference Friday night against Oakland that they got to get better in those two areas. Well, they work Saturday and they work Sunday, and they're gonna work on that to get ready for Alabama. And then we just don't know what level and scheme that they've changed up or improved on to do that. But I think what I have seen, those are the three keys. Who shoots better from three? Can you limit Purdue's wide open threes? Can Alabama get to the rim and spray the ball out or score at the rim? Can they hit the offensive glass? If you win 2 or 3 of those areas, then I don't know if it's much of an upset at Alabama, but ranking wise, then that's how I think Alabama wins. I think if Purdue can contain the bounce and go 50-50 on the rebounds and then scheme up some offensive shots, then that's how Purdue wins.
When Alabama went to Mackey Arena in Purdue last year, it was coming off of some less than stellar performances against good mid-majors in McNeese State, who was coached by Will Wade. He's now at North Carolina State. Arkansas State by Brian Hodgson, who was a former Nate Oates assistant and is now at South Florida. But then Alabama got to the Purdue game, fell apart late. Purdue wins. And I know from an Alabama fan base perspective, there was a lot of doom and gloom about that team with the expectations that had come in, being number 2 in the country, and just maybe not living up to some of those expectations early on in the season. Purdue's coming off of a game that Oakland's a really good team. Oakland's been around for a long time in college basketball. You mentioned Oakland beating Kentucky. I know John Campy, I may have the name wrong, but Campy's been there for a long time at Oakland, has done a really good job with the Golden Grizzlies. But how important is this game for Purdue and Purdue fans with the expectations that came into the year that if this game does not go your way, you're 2-1, your last two performances against Oakland and Alabama were probably not great performances. And if you add on that Kaufman Wren does not play in this game, he's still dealing with a hip pointer when he's going to get back healthy, and how healthy can he be in a Big Ten that's known for being a physical conference? So how big, just from a psyche and making sure that you keep your head up and you keep the positive momentum, is this game for Purdue and its fans looking at the rest of the season?
I think the team's better prepared to handle adversity than the fans are prepared, as in any fan base, right? The
Right.
fans are already panicking when they lost to Kentucky in the exhibition game, right? So I think Coach Painter and his veteran kids, the TKR has been there now 3 or 4 years with the redshirt year, and Fletcher and those guys, they can handle losses. They've lost some games that they shouldn't have out the road in Nebraska at some point in their career and all of those things, and they always bounce back. So early games matter, but they're not, the end of the season by any means. So, but I think it's important. Purdue has to play to the level of their ranking at some point. Now, playing on the road is very, very difficult. Alabama ran into it at Mackey last year, right? And that's just so hard to explain and understand. Like, it is so loud in there. And I'm sure your venue is going to be equally as loud and pumped up too. So a loss by Purdue is not going to worry me at all about their stature in the Big Ten or where they're going to be in come the tournament time. I do think you raised some concerns with the injury. I think there are some concerns if it's rebounding and guarding the bounce that have shown up in 2 or 3 games. At some point, you have to fix those issues to be a good ball club, or a ball club that is at that number one level, ranking level. So I think it's important for Purdue to get a win. It's huge for bracketology. These preseason games are huge, and it's huge for the Big Ten too, because if Purdue beats an Alabama, then that raises the net and all of that every time you play a Purdue type of thing. And it's equally important for Alabama for those reasons too. But Purdue will rebound, win or lose, and go on and be very successful this year. So I think, to say it's not important is false, but I think the fans, they'll overreact because Purdue fans, well, my Indiana fans do as well. I'm sure your Alabama fans do too. It's in this day and age in the world, it is always, you are as good as you were your last game. We love you if you win. We don't like you at all if you lose until that next game. So I think the fans will start panicking a little bit. But if TKR doesn't play, that no excuse. You play with the guys on the floor, but that's a big piece. I'm thinking that Alabama takes care of business, but I don't discount Matt Painter and the Purdue Boilermakers in any game at any time in any situation. They're that prepared, that tough nosed, and just good overall basketball players. And you have to be at your best if you're Alabama to beat them, no matter where you play them.
Well, I want to bring it back to bracketology as we close down. I was looking at your preseason bracketology at Delphi, and you do have Purdue on the one line right now. So knowing that Purdue is on the one line for your predictions right now, or your bracketology, what do you expect, or what are you expecting from Purdue as we get into March, ending the Big Ten season, the Big Ten tournament, and then making a run potentially in the NCAA tournament?
Well, first of all, Charles, we appreciate you giving our website some hits. But preseason bracketology is not really good bracketology. I don't care if you're Joe Lenardi or anyone else. You are guessing. I looked at Ken Palm and Bart Torvik and tried to take averages to put something out there for our website because people like to see it. So I don't know how meaningful it really is, and I do it. So I maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's just based on who's returning and some of those mathematical formulas just to give us something to talk about. I'm not sure Purdue's a 1 seed. And my people around here that I work with at the school, they'll be mad at me if I say that. I think they're a good 2 or 3 seed. I don't know what the difference is between last year and this year when they have most of their players back. But right now, the way they're playing, I don't think they're 1 seed. When you're watching, some teams play early, getting Arizona, getting a nice win over Florida, you guys beating St. John's, like those are big wins that go into that quad 1 category, and they start counting right now. And you got to move teams up. Our bracket will really take shape mid-December. when a lot of the non-conference stuff is over and conference play starts. And then really mid-January is when we have enough data to really kind of feel comfortable about what range teams are in. But boy, do these games matter. If Alabama beats St. John's and beats Purdue, like those games aren't going away, and Purdue and St. John's aren't going away either. So those wins will carry through the end of the year, and that really helps bracketology. But I don't know if I think Purdue's going to end up as a 1 seed. If I was predicting now, and I'm glad this is going to be played in Alabama, not so much up here in Indiana, because I'd be getting some dislike. But I think they're good, and I wouldn't want to play them too many times because I just think they're really well coached. They got great guys. They got great basketball players with great skill that want to win, and that's really a good recipe for college basketball. But man, there's some good basketball. Like BYU's playing well, and they got that Demantia kid. Like we just don't know all of the good teams. And the other thing, Charles, that I learned from bracketology, share with your listeners. If you're a 6 seed, you're a top 24 team. I always used to think, oh, you got a 5 seed, 6 seed, that's not good. You're not having a good season. Well, really, 7 seeds, that's the top 28 teams in the country are the 1 through 7. And if you're a 7 seed, you're likely not to get out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. That's how competitive this sport is. So, yeah, Purdue can still be good and not be a number 1 seed. I think Alabama's and Kentucky right now are moving up in that SEC quite a bit in wherever they were ranked preseason with wins like that it matters. So, yeah, keep looking at our website, and it's Delphi Bracketology for everyone listening. We'll keep you updated, and we'll tell you who's moving and who's dropping, but our brackets really take place and have some meat on them come mid-December.
So I respect that, a lot more data should be in mid-December and that you are guessing a lot right now, but you're using what you have to make really good educated guesses, in my
Thank you.
opinion. So I'm going to still ask you the question, do you have a prediction on where Alabama will fall on the seed line when we get to Selection Sunday in March?
That's tough because SEC is loaded, right? You can be really good. Next thing you know, you got a couple road games and you get smacked down, right? And then bracketology, Charles, is always a comparison, right? If you're in a bucket of 4 or 5 teams that could be on the 3 seed line or the 2 seed line, we do a lot of our work as when we share a bracket. It's if the season ended today based on the data today. So if it's after 10 games, what seed would you get if the season ended after 10 games? We don't try to predict your schedule and wins and losses and all of those things because we just like to use the data. This is what's happened, and we're going to make judgments based on what's happened. So if I were to do that right now, like you're talking about a top protected seed, a 1 through 4 seed easily, because that win is probably the best win. It was our team of the week. Alabama was our team of the week. It was the game of the week, winning that game. That's how important that first win was. If St. John's going to hang around the top 10 all year, you have a top 10 neutral site win. It might even be a road win considered where'd they play at the Garden?
Played the Garden.
I don't think that's classified as St. John's home court, but that winning against St. John's is big, but winning neutral is even bigger. So right now, I would say, based on what we've seen, minus injuries or anything like that, you have a good chance of being a top 4 protected seed.
Have you ever had a team be back-to-back team of the week? Because I have to imagine if Alabama beats Purdue that they've got to be up there for maybe being team of the week again.
Yeah, the games are spread out a little bit too, so that might be the biggest game on the schedule. I'll have to talk to my crew about whether they want to do that or we just kind of go a different direction and kind of shake things up. We are around Purdue, so we might not have to select it just to keep our donations up
Right.
that we get from our Purdue fans.
This has been a lot of fun, Brian. I really appreciate your time. I know we've mentioned Delphi bracketology a lot, but I again want you to share where people can find you. We'll obviously post some things on our YouTube and our Apple and Spotify podcast, but we've got more Alabama basketball fans. We've got more just basketball fans in general being generated down here. Where can they follow Delphi bracketology throughout the rest of the season and beyond?
Yeah, thanks. We have a Twitter page at Delphi Brackets. You can follow us. We try to update stuff as often as possible. Do apologize when we're at games. We will give live game reports. So if you're not interested in Indiana versus Milwaukee, you can mute our webpage. But then the webpage is delphibracketology.com. And again, we just put out capsules. It's not long form. You're not going to get an analysis of a team or anything. You're going to get stats and brief comments about games, about bracket impact. You'll see our latest bracket. And once we do a seed list, you'll see the 1 through 68 list there. So DelphiBracketology.com, on the X or the Twitter at Delphi Brackets. And Charles, please, if you ever need an update, feel free to contact me through that social media, and I can give you something to use on the podcast, or where we are, or why, if you see us have Alabama at the 3 seed or the 4 seed line, or what any game impact would be, please reach out. And if you ever needed a quick thing for a guest, again, middle of the season or when it comes closer to March, I would be glad to jump on with you. Christian introduced me to the Alabama basketball world when he joined our podcast, and I appreciate the return invitation, and it's been great to talk to you, and roll tide.
Look, we're hoping to be there in March, and why not get the best information from the breast bracket group? So I again appreciate your time, appreciate all y'all do as far as getting people updated and putting out realistic brackets. I want to wish good luck to you and the club as they put all that together. Also want to wish good luck to Delphi's basketball team that y'all going to be cheering on this year as well as they go through Indiana high school basketball. But it's going to be an exciting game in Tuscaloosa. It's the first of back-to-back games for Alabama against Big Ten teams, as well as we'll eventually head to Chicago and play Illinois in the following week. But again, Brian, thank you so much for your insight, and we would love to have you back throughout this season, hopefully updating us on why Alabama's making a march to maybe the one line potentially by the end of the year.
All right, best of luck to you and all your fans.
Thank you, Brian.